Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good. Nice to see you. Look, I'm not really a preacher. I'm a school teacher, as so many of you know, and thank you for your warm welcomes. It's lovely to come back to Midland to share something from God's good book. Many of you don't know, but I come here every week. I'm quite a regular at Midland. And I was invited to contribute to Midland Meals, and it's a big challenge. And look, I really want to say that you guys are the salt of the earth people. You go into that room sometimes, and it's an absolute disaster. And I think, bless your hearts, you put up with it. And so many of you do, and you know what I'm saying, don't you? You know, it's a big challenge, and but let me say that it's also the it's hard to quantify the impact that has in the community. I don't think any of us will really understand. I'm getting a bit emotional. I don't think any of us will really understand or know just the people who have been touched. And sometimes it's only once. You know, there's one mum who brings her 4 girls almost every week. And, 3 years ago she was in drug rehabilitation, but she comes to Midland Meals and her kids get a decent meal. And, but there are so many stories. I asked Mrs. Blizzard out in when we're having lunch here, I was here, I think, for Sir Clifford's funeral. It was a funeral, actually. But that's what a baptism is, isn't it? So for Sir Clifford's baptism, and I stayed for lunch, and I was talking to Mrs. Blizzard. What's her first name? Joy? Dawn. Yeah, Dawn. And I said to Dawn, I said, what do you think of Midland Meals? You contribute to it. And I was, I'd been helping for about 9 months by then. And I said, what do you think of Midland Meals? And this is what she said. And I don't know whether she's ever said it to anybody else, but this is what she said to me. She said, let me tell you something. When we started to support Midland Meals, and once again, I find this hard to say without getting emotional, she said the amount of money that our shop took up there, where is it? Bendoon. She said virtually overnight, the amount of money we took in doubled. That was her answer to what did she think about the ministry that you guys, so many of you, are involved in. That's what she said. What was she really saying? She felt that God's hand was in what was going on. Anyway, that's not what I came to talk about. I have brought my dear esteemed friend Warren. Warren has moved down from Clarkson. Warren has, I guess he would probably say he's been an Anglican all his life. And I first met Warren in 1986. I went and taught at Thornley Senior High School. And when I spoke to the moderator in town, he said, I had come back from Pakistan, and he said, look, if you like, I'd like you to go to Thornley. He said, the deputy's pretty useless, but the English, the new head of English, he's an absolute gun. And he said, you'll be lucky if you can keep up with him. And these days I can keep up with Warren, because unfortunately Warren, like the rest of us, are all getting old. But, Warren and I have been great mates ever since, and I've asked Warren to come today. And Warren, by the way, now is sharing, he's helping with Midland Meals. He decided he would like to try and do something for other people in a special way, and not that he hasn't, he's been doing that all his life. But anyway, I'll get him to say a little bit more a little bit later. Anyway, what I've done is I've bought my suitcase, all right, and the reason why I bought this suitcase, by the way, these are the size suitcases that that our family used when we went to England for 5 weeks. And in fact, my wife, when she travels, she's actually got even a smaller one. But this one, we had 5 people to put in a car, and she went to England last year with another lady, and they said, look, we've only got a small car, so remember to bring a small suitcase. She bought a suitcase about 4 times that size, so they ended up having to get a bigger car, which cost them about $600. Anyway, that's beside the point. There are lots of stories about the pearly gates, all right? Lots of stories, and I'm sure that you've told stories and had stories told for you. And there's one story about a guy who rocks up to the pearly gates, and who's at the pearly gates? Peter, St. Peter. He's got to be St. Peter. Poor old bloke, he must be so busy. But anyway, so this old guy rocks up to the pearly gates, and he has a suitcase. And Peter says, of course, just in case you don't know, this is not in Scripture, and it's not real. Anyway, you've got the drift. And so Peter says, what are you doing with a suitcase? He said, what have you got in the suitcase? He says, I've got bars of gold. And Peter said, oh, you poor man. Why are you bringing paving bricks to heaven? Why are you bringing paving bricks to heaven? Now, of course, that's a stupid little story, but man, it packs a punch, doesn't it? You know, because every day of every week, you're packing your suitcase. And the question that I'm going to ask today is, what's in your suitcase? And I hope that what I share with you, and honestly, I'm not going to find this easy to share with you. I have to be very honest. I'm going to really struggle. Okay, is that okay? And Lauren rang me up yesterday. Pastor Lauren rang me up yesterday, and he said, "Look, Milton's got COVID, and is it possible you could swap?" And I said, "Well, look, I can swap, but the one I was going to talk about, which apparently he's already told you, has got something to do with royalty and those sorts of things. And it's a fascinating talk, and maybe one day you'll invite me back, and I might give that. I'll present it to you. But anyway." I said, but I have been thinking about another thing because a lot of people have been asking me, I want you to know that the Adventist philosophy or teaching on the state of the dead is a very strong teaching. It's a very strong teaching. And it's a wonderful teaching because of the way that it can reach people. And I hope today that you leave feeling that it was good to come to church today. I appreciate the thought that's been shared. I hope that's the case. I'm going to take my watch off because I'm not sure about that one up there. And hang on, my kids bought me this newfangled thing, which is quite wonderful. I was showing one of my friends yesterday how that when you fall down, it rings and says, "Do you need an ambulance?" Which is really very good. The only trouble was that this one, it can have a chip in and of its own, but it's got to be connected to the phone, and I'd forgotten my phone, so I felt a bit stupid. But anyway, yeah, this is a bit of a trick because it's now turning off. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to. Oh no, here we go. That's all right. That's okay. So, all right. So, before I go anywhere, I want to give you a little grammar lesson. Is that okay? All right. I'd like to give you a little grammar lesson. And this is really important to what we're going to talk about. So can you bear with me? And let's just see if this works. Okay. Here is Psalm 20. Let's have a pointer on it. Okay. Everybody knows it. Now I've chosen the King James Version because that's probably. Chris, how are you? Good. The King James Version is the one that we probably all know, isn't it? All right? But I've also chosen it for another reason. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Okay? Now, I want you to focus on that word there, I shall, okay? Because I shall is a verb to be. And don't get too worried about all the jargon and lingo and rubbish, okay? You know, what I'm going to talk about, but you'll get the drift very quickly, okay? So that's the verb to be, I shall. And then we say will, that's the plural. And then we say you, no, you will, all right? And that's the singular. And then we say you will. And if I had half a brain, I would have put another slide here, okay? But you can see I got called yesterday and I'm a little bit, so I do apologise for having to fill in the gaps a bit, all right? Is that okay? And then the third person, so I'm talking to you, you will, and then I'm talking to you about Mr. Pisey over here, so I'm talking to you about Glenn, and I say he will, or they will. You get that? So first, second, and third. You got that? Yes? Okay, good. All right. Now I want you to come down and notice here, leads me in the paths of righteousness, I will. See, it's I shall. Now it's saying I will. All right? And then it comes down a bit further and it says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will. Can you see that that's different to what I was telling you? When we talk about formal English, it goes I shall, you will, they will, or he, she, it will. You got that? But if we are writing a legal document, we then turn it round and we go, I will, you shall, they shall. So instead of going shall, will, it goes will, shall. You got that? All right. And what is the difference? The difference is this, and I want you to listen to it here. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will to dwell. I am determined to dwell. You get that? I am determined to dwell. It's called the determinate sense of the verb to be. I am determined to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Okay? Yes? You with me? Okay. There's another one. John 14, 1-3. What's it go? In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again. I am determined to come again. And the thing is that if you go to the NIV or, most of the modern translations, they lose this. They lose it. And it's a really, really important thing, particularly for us as Adventists, just to be aware of it. Okay, is that okay? Mind you, the New King James Version, sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. So it's just nice to be aware of it. Is that fair enough? Okay. Now, let's just see what my next slide is. Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again. Where did I get that from? Does anybody know? You know where I got it from? No, not necessarily. Sorry? It's a song? Not necessarily. Maybe it is, sorry. Yeah. The reason why I asked Glenn is because for at least 3 years, Glenn was chairman of the board of a school in Kalgoorlie. Was it 3 years? Three years. Okay, do you recognise it now? Yeah, it's in there. It is. This will be said millions of times today. All right, it will be stated millions of times because they kind of parrot. Can I use the word? They kind of repeat. We're feeding back here. Is that a problem? Where's it coming through? Okay. Yeah, so millions of Catholics will say this today. And there are wonderful Christians, as you would be aware, in the Catholic Church worshipping God. But I say to them, Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again. Why is he coming again? Why is he coming again? Because he said so. But why is it in the Mass? Why is it in the Mass? And you know their answer? If they know the answer, then their answer is a very interesting one. Because they say that when Jesus comes back to earth, he will unite the soul and the body. All right? And he'll bring those two together. Is that fair enough? All right. So that's what they believe. And they believe, for instance, when Mary went to heaven, that she went to heaven body and soul. And I said, Merv, how did you become an Adventist? He said, look, this is the story. He said, my family come from Adelaide. And in Adelaide, I think it was his father was standing, or his uncle was standing at the graveside of their little child, trying to make sense of their little child being in heaven, playing with the other kids while they're down here on earth, really feeling a terrible time. Okay? And anyway, he said, we just couldn't make sense of it. And an Adventist person happened to be there at the same time, and they said, well, this is what my church believes. And as a result, the whole Chapman clan joined the Adventist church because of what we believe. What do we believe? We believe in what most people call soul sleep. Okay? That's what we believe in, that when we die, we go to sleep and we wait. We wait. We wait. As you know, many of you know, I lost a boy. It was very sad. 1990, March 8th. Now that's a fair while ago now. And it was a terrible situation. It was really, really hard work. And I was involved in a big drama production in town. Warren had actually got me into it. And we were doing a 10-day production in the Quarry Theatre. It was called The Redemption. So it's the last week of Jesus' life with modern touches, like Herod's henchmen arrived on motorbikes and that sort of thing. So it was appealing to people, but it was still packing a really good punch. Anyway, my boy died on the Thursday. Thursday night, they pulled my scene. I was one of the Pharisees. Sorry about that. And on Friday morning, okay, so you feel free to say a little bit. By the way, how much time have we got?
It's underneath.
53, okay, good. On my program, they say 10 past 12. Is that all right? Or will you be asleep by then?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. Pete rang me up last night and said, I'd like you to come to church tomorrow and say a few things. I went, pardon? As he said, we go back away. And when one of the actors who was playing in The Redemption had to leave, I went to the director and I said, I've got a friend who might be able to help. And his name was Gordon Honeycomb. Great name, Honeycomb. And Pete came in, did an audition, got the part straight away, which was fantastic because I love working with this guy. I'd been working with him as a teacher for quite a while. And he said it was going to be tough. It's pretty tough now. So stay with me. When we got the news of the tragedy, there were about 120 people in the production, and we all came together like Most of us didn't even know each other. We only maybe know the 2 or 3 people that were in a scene together. And the whole play took on an incredible power, which came out on the last night when Pete and Susie came back to the production and came on for the curtain call. The director, who came from England, worked in the BBC, had written books, had made films and everything, decided after the play that he would come to live in Perth. And I think it was on the strength of the character of all the people that were there in his play. But it was an incredible moment. And later on at the funeral, I didn't have any words to say to Pete. And I was reminded about an hour ago of what I did. I was talking to one of the people in the congregation and she reminded...
Consul came and spoke to you, didn't he?
Yep.
Now, who was the American consul? What role was he doing?
Oh goodness, he was one of the wise men.
He was one of the wise men, okay, and he knew that Warren and I were friends, and he said to the American consul said to Warren, he said, look, when you go and see Peter, can you share with him this Bible verse, okay? And so Warren's going to read the Bible verse, and let's see if it's up on here. There it is, okay? So this is what he said. He said, when you go and talk to Peter, make sure you share with him this Bible verse. So thanks, Warren.
Okay. Uh-oh. Technology.
No, that's okay.
Give me the book.
Look,
Give me the book.
okay. Here we go.
Raise him up from them. And it came to pass on the 7th day that the child died. And the servants of David feared to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, behold, while the child was alive, we spake unto him, and he would not hearken unto our... Then said his servants unto him, what thing is this that thou hast done? Didst fast and weep for the child while it was alive, but when the child was dead, thou and eat bread.
Thank you very much, Warren. And I mentioned to Warren yesterday that was probably, in my life, that has probably been the most profound scripture that I've read for my experience. And the reason why is this: while the child was alive, I fasted and wept. Who can tell whether the Lord will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he's dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. And that's what the American consul said to Warren. Share with Peter that last verse, because that's really important. You've got to get on with your life. You've got to get on with your life. And leave. You've got to move on, and it's not always easy to do that. And a couple of years later, I've spoken to Kerry this morning and I've let her know that I would be mentioned. But a couple of years later, I got a phone call from Ray. And Ray said, I've lost my Daniel. And I shared that story with him. About a month ago, I got a phone call from Leslie Topperween. How many of you know Leslie? Okay. And Leslie says, I want to thank you for sharing with me. Because you know what Monday is, don't you? Monday's the 19th of February. That's the 1-year anniversary of her Ken getting killed on his motorbike. In the last 2 weeks, I've attended 3 funerals. It's hard going for people to say goodbye, isn't it? The shortest verse in the Bible is what? Jesus wept. Why did he weep? John 11:11. Why did he weep? Was he simply being empathetic? You know, they're upset, I better weep. I had never really thought of it this way, but I was listening to an Adventist pastor expound on it, and he said, you know, the reason why Jesus wept was because Lazarus was his mate. You see, when people die, God loses a mate. If you are working for him, if you are serving him, God loses a mate, doesn't he? Does that make sense? And I think that's a wonderful thought, you know, because so many Christians, and I don't tell them they're wrong, but so many Christians say, well, no, they're in heaven enjoying God's company while we're down here suffering. When Jesus went to Lazarus, he wept because he lost a mate, and he knew that he was going to lose him for a fair while, you know. And you know, one day you're not going to be here. It's God. What will you have? There's a spotlight right up at the top of the quarry, and they shine the light down, and here's the angel Gabriel. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? He's not here, he's risen. And what they had was, if you can imagine the stage going down there, and then this is the back of the stage, and a big black curtain all the way along. Can you imagine that? Okay, and they had Jesus on a cherry picker back in a car park, and this is the actor's car park, and the cherry picker's coming up like this, and in front of the cherry picker they had this black curtain, shroud, whatever, material, and Jesus is rising up, and then when Gabriel says he's risen, everybody blew out their candles. And what happens when you blow out a candle? A whole lot of smoke. A whole lot of smoke. And here's the smoke of 120 candles slowly rising up into the sky, and the cherry picker with Jesus on it just going a little bit above him. And here's Jesus, you know, rising up. And it was really a very strong thing. So on the Friday night they had another Pharisee in my part, and then on the Saturday night he did my part as well. But in the end, I was up on stage with my candle. And it was really nice to meet, excuse me, a bit hard. It was really nice to meet the people, and, you know, and they expressed their sadness and sort of thing. And I said I had to come for the resurrection. And the national anthem exists. And I said, yes, of course it exists. But what happens if the last person on earth dies who knows the national anthem? Does it still exist? That was his question. He's a maths teacher, maths lecturer. Does it still exist? What would you say? Does it still exist? All the paper's gone, all the recordings are gone, nobody knows how to sing it anymore. Does it still exist? Does it? Does it? Well, the answer, this was his answer. He says, does your voice still exist? When the last person on earth dies, he's still in the heart of God. And that's an important thing to remember, because a lot of Adventists now, as you know, are getting cremated. So what's going to happen on the resurrection day? You know? But I said to you, my watch talks to my phone, and we don't even blink an eye at that. You look at what we've got up on the screen. How did that happen? You think of so many of you, what's happened in your last 20 or 30 years. It's just phenomenal what's gone on. Is it, if God has a copy of my DNA, if a copy of my DNA has gone to glory when I die, is that difficult for God? I don't think so. I don't think so, but I still believe in soul sleep. I still believe that when a saint dies, God's lost a mate. Very much so. Let me tell you one more story. How much time have I got? He said, look, Peter, would you mind taking photographs of a funeral? Okay, what was the funeral? Well, the funeral was of a 52-year-old who happened to be a relative of my servant's. Okay, my servant Ramit was just the most beautiful man. And I said, sure, Ramit, I'll be happy to take the service. Now, who was this 52-year-old guy? He'd left Karachi, he'd left Pakistan, he'd gone out and we'd say he'd sown his wild oats. He'd left his wife, he'd got on drugs, he'd got into alcohol, he'd got into smoking. It was not exactly the sort of funeral that was going to be easy to preach in an Adventist church. Does that make sense? You with me? And I will never, ever forget Pastor Ditter's talk. You know what he talked about? He said Adventists talk about the blessed hope. He said, what's the blessed hope? What would you say if I said to you, what's the blessed hope?
Resurrection.
The resurrection, Jesus' return. Yeah. He said Jesus' return is more than the blessed hope. It's the blessed certainty. It's the blessed certainty. He said the blessed hope is that God's going to say to you, Peter, to you, Bruce, to you, Warren, to you, Glenn, to you, Kerry, he's going to say to you, you can come. You can come. That's the hope. I mean, the second coming is the hope too, don't get me wrong. But you understand what he was trying to say, don't you? Okay, let me see what I've got on here. This is Job 19:25. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and he shall stand. Can you see the determinate sense? He is determined to stand. Okay? What about the next one? Whoops. What happened there? Let's wait. Okay, this is interesting. Have a look at this one. This is the New King James Version. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. The King James Version, God shall. God is, come on, put the word in there for me. Determined. God is determined. This is not just some little thing sorry about that. This is not just some little thing he's dreamed up. He's determined to wipe away all tears. And that's really, really important. God is determined to wipe away all tears from their eyes. The blessed certainty. Now, the next thing I've got, this is your homework. All right? I've told you about that. This is your homework. All right? I want you to go in to the YouTube and I want you to dial up It Is Well With My Soul, because this takes 15 minutes, so we're not going to do it now. But go home, dial it up. It's a wonderful story about how that hymn came into being. And it's a very sad story, but it's a glorious story, because eventually the lady who was involved goes over to Jerusalem and she packs her bag. She packs her bag. And I'll tell you what she has in her bag. Okay, so that's your homework, is that right? Okay, so we're going to leave it there, but I'll just check. This is what she had in her bag. At least this is what I believe she put in her bag. Somewhere here, there's a zip that opens it up. I think this is the only thing you can put in your bag. Faith,